This is a gadget DPS loadout and rotation post-game update 55. This is another option if you don't want to use the stealth route. The stealth loadout where you use distract, stealth, 3 powers, and EMP while having battle display inside your stealth tray. Normally that produces around 1k more DPS using the Tunso test than just using the rotation that I'm about to use now, which is just 3 powers and then distract and EMP. And another thing I want to mention, I'm using distract over intimidation because although on paper and over sparring target testing, intimidation will net slightly more damage, in raid instances with NPCs with varying health pools and some of which of course are low, distract nets more damage over 2 seconds compared to intimidation, in which you have to have a target stay alive a long period of time for you to rake in those numbers on the scorecard. And considering you're going up against other DPS that have other AMs and register damage in different ways, and in some cases faster, you don't want to waste time with intimidation in that scenario. Intimidation is only really ideal for really long fights and fights where there are multiple interruptions. And I'm not talking about like once every 10 seconds you have to block or something. I'm talking about like numerous and consistent interruptions. And I'll probably talk about that when I get to intimidation or whatever. This the other thing that I want to mention before I continue more with the damage is here's what I'm spec'd into in the iconics tree. And then 6 powers in my devices tree and 7 in my tactics tree. The reason why I want to specialize in the tactics tree is because of the specialization grant that you get. Specializing in this tree will give you 5% critical attack damage. That's what I want. And then just to show you, because this is damage that I'm dealing on a sparring target that has a 126 CR. This is my might, and my equipped CR is 145. I also have max damage and core strength and escalating might and blast adapter. And in the head and the chest, you could just, since you're not using weapons at all, you could go ahead and put might in there if you wanted to. But the AM is might based. Yellow numbers. That's why I'm going for might. In this rotation, of course, you would start off with battle display, distract, EMP. You could also do Gauss, foam, vortex, or you could do foam, Gauss, then vortex. Depending on the NPC's health, whether it's like super low to the point where it doesn't really matter, you could pop Gauss or foam. If it's a NPC with a big health pool, again, that one doesn't really matter. You could pop Gauss first, but normally as the rotation continues on the same NPC, frostbitten targets will give a 50% PI buff to Gauss. At the same time, Vortex Cannon, when you first use it, doesn't benefit from 50% PI boosted damage. It's only after you use it again on the same target. Dazed effects I think last like 11 seconds. So as long as you see that animation on the NPC's head and then you continue to Vortex, because Vortex Cannon applies dazed effects and takes advantage of NPCs that have the dazing PI on them, you'll deal 50% more damage. So here I'm already benefiting from burst damage, and Vortex and Gauss deal the same, both with and without the power interaction. The reason why I am using Vortex over Fear Gas is because Fear Gas is a DOT. Fear Gas takes advantage of explosive damage, and it's also taking advantage of burning. When you use Vortex, it's a burst hit, so it's registering damage right away. And there you see the damage range when the NPCs have the PI up. When you use Fear Gas, that damage, it's rapid ticks over the course of 4 seconds. As opposed to Vortex Cannon that's dealing slightly more damage over 1 second. That's why I'm using Vortex. The only thing you really have to get over when using Vortex is the fact that it's mid-range, just like EMP. So if you're one of those players that gets in there, you're not really going to have an issue because you're using both these at the same range anyway. If you're trying to overcome that, then of course what you do is you do the movement jump. If you miss the first Vortex Cannon, that's fine. Just lunge in and EMP. And you get the burst hit. I mean, of course, ideally you want to register Vortex, but again, the reason why I'm choosing Vortex over Fear Gas is that when you're trying to accumulate damage on the scorecard, you want to do it fast. And Vortex is superior in time over Fear Gas. That's why I'm using it. You can use Fear Gas if you want to, if you prefer Fear Gas because of its far range and because of explosive damage and the PIs or whatever. You can. It is easier. It's just that the damage that you're gaining from Vortex compared to Fear Gas, it's only a slight increase. I'm not saying that you have to have Vortex because it's overall superior to it. The difference in damage that we're talking about is not that significant. It's just slight increases. A majority of your damage comes from EMP and P-Dart being 80%. Foam, CryoFoam comes in at around 11%. Lowest maybe 9%. Powers like Fear Gas comes in at 5, sometimes 6, and then Gauss would come in at like 3 or 4%, sometimes 5, depending. Of course, this is all getting a slice of the pie type of deal. With Vortex and Gauss, again, you register faster damage. Ultimately, it doesn't matter where these small differences, what I'm trying to get at is that they really don't matter. If you are like really bent, really obsessed with accumulating the slightest bit of damage, then yes, I recommend Vortex Cannon over Fear Gas. However, it's not a must. I just like Vortex Cannon because it's a burst ability. Again, you have to make sure that you're mobile, you're taking advantage of the jumping while in animation, that you're lunging, your trinkets, your orbitals, and you should do fine. But this is the loadout and rotation that I use. And again, if you want to, you can definitely squeeze in Fear Gas. If you're fighting like a boss with a really big health pool, you could definitely get away with Fear Gas in there. If you want to keep some distance too, obviously Fear Gas, but ultimately you do have a choice, but fact remains it slightly leans towards Vortex.